Hello, wherever you are. Welcome to Christianity Out Loud. Before I forget, my name is Steve, or Stephen J. Hanna. If you're going to go and buy a copy of the book, copy of the first book, first one of many, hopefully. So there you go. I checked today; it's up to 1,000 and something or other on the Amazon Christianity and Religion something or other bestsellers list. So that's a bit of fun. Why don't you try and bump it a little bit higher and go and grab a copy. If you like what I'm trying to do, you hit the like and the subscribe button, because then you'll get a nice little notification whenever a new video pops up, which is weekly. I really wasn't going to do one this week. I think I mentioned last week I've got this migraine condition, or headache condition technically. I am suffering quite badly with that, but I did see a headline that I just couldn't leave alone, so we'll touch on that this week. The website is actually nearly done, so by the time this goes up, it should be online and running. So that'll be christianityoutloud.com.au. Keep the .au. I am in Australia, so if you're watching from overseas or somewhere else, I'm Australian, so I'll keep the .au on it. It's not that much more to type. So on another side note, before I get to see what I'm looking at this week, I did read that mask mandates here look like they're coming back. So, who would have thought giving governments unfettered power and access to making all of these rules would result in these silly things coming back again. I mean, you want to wear one? Go for your life. I don't, so I won't. And don't give me the be considerate of others. I am very considerate of others. As far as masks are concerned, you do you, I will do me. Headline. This is a good one. That's not part of the headline. Headline's a good one. Safe place, because there's inverted commas there. Safe place. Australian Museum defends allowing a man in lingerie playing with Lego at children's event. And I didn't read that correctly, so I'll read it again. Australian Museum defends allowing a man in lingerie play with Lego at children's event. I did read that correctly. I'm not sure it's grammatically correct. Anyway, point being, the first line. The Australian Museum has defended allowing a man in women's lingerie to play Lego next to children after one woman slammed it as disgusting. I'm not sure what else you'd call it. Reading on. The Australian Museum in Sydney has defended offering a safe place where everyone feels welcome after a man wearing women's lingerie was photographed playing with Lego next to children. That's the photographs, show a man wearing black fishnet stockings, pink boots, and women's underwear. I'll let you conjure up that in your mind. Sitting next to another person wearing a top hat, playing with Lego blocks surrounded by young children. So if you've been following along here for a little while, you would know full well why I just couldn't leave that one alone. And it, depressed me really. I mean, remember the last few of these videos I have done? What sort of world do we want for our children? I think that was the question I asked at the end of last week's. What sort of world do you want to live in? Well, here you are. So you'd have a child in the womb a child in the womb at 35 weeks born alive despite the attempts of an abortive procedure and is left to die. That's the law here in Queensland. If the child is born, what they can do is they can then go to a museum, fun, wholesome family activity of, sitting down to build Lego while sitting right next to a man wearing fishnet stockings, pink boots and women's underwear. What sort of world do you want? See, the Marriage Equality Act, the plebiscite, as it was called here in Australia, that occurred, I thought it was 2019, but it wasn't, it was earlier, it was 2017. It was November 2017, so I just did a little fact check on my own knowledge there. I voted no. I voted no in that plebiscite. Why? Because I have an irrational fear of gay people? No, that would be ridiculous. I voted no because I believe the institution of marriage, or that marriage was instituted by God. And I believe it was instituted by God for the purposes of creating a family unit. And I believe that that family unit must consist of a mother, female, father, male, and I don't believe that those roles, and that would include the classification male and female, the biological classification male and female, I don't believe that those roles are interchangeable. I don't. Now, you could make an argument about the separation of church and state. You could make that argument. And we could have a genuine conversation about that. Because that is something I have wrestled with. I have gone from I've gone to the, separation of church and state. I can understand why and how. I've wrestled with that myself. As a Bible-believing Christian, I have wrestled with that. Okay? However, when Western civilization is built and predicated upon there being male and female, mother and father in the family unit, and the unique roles of each, but the holistic benefit of both, I remain unconvinced that there is a better model for marriage. Okay? I don't want to give too much away about my family, okay? But I do have a daughter. When she reaches that particular age, where changes to her body start to occur, I'll be eternally grateful that she has a mother. I haven't been through that. I also have a son. When he reaches that age, things start changing in him, I'm sure my wife will be grateful that he has a father, because she's never been through that. We can each then bring the other perspective, but that's all it is. It is a perspective. And what is my perspective of those changes? What is my wife's perspective of the changes occurring in my son, how he can deal with them? When this plebiscite occurred, I voted no because I saw a slippery slope. Now, I saw a slippery slope because when men and women, male and female, are now interchangeable, those are no longer defining characteristics, and they are just totally interchangeable and malleable, if you like, why would it stop there? Don't be ridiculous, Steve. That won't happen. Just move with the times. It's modern. It's fine. It's a quality. I've heard it all. I heard it all. Okay? I heard it all, and I still hear your point. I still hear it. I do. But I raise you the following. And I didn't look this up on my work laptop for fear of who knows what sort of reprisals. So if you wish to go and research this, you can. I don't know whether I'll be able to get a link below. But anyway, from welcomeconnections.com, minor attracted persons are individuals whose sexual and romantic orientations often draw them to underage people. I'm sorry. I must have missed that. When did the definition of pedophile change? Because I missed that. It's now not a pedophile, it's a minor attracted person. Right. So that makes it better. Does it? I guess it must be more socially acceptable, more culturally acceptable. Otherwise, why change the name? Why change that definition and classification if it's not socially acceptable? The only way you do that is if it's becoming socially acceptable. So I really did miss that change. I was asleep when that occurred. What about my slippery slope? Now, back to my true feelings on it. Now, I am not saying that these, quote, minor attracted people, end quote, not my words, are from the LGBTQI+, not being disrespectful, I just can't remember the entire acronym. I'm not saying that they are from that community. What I'm saying is that once boundaries are removed, once innate characteristics become interchangeable, where do you think this was going to lead? Where else could it lead? It was inevitable that this was going to end up with drag time stories, drag queen story time, whatever it was, and that occurred I'm 99% certain that occurred in Brisbane here in Australia, as well as other places. Where else was it going to lead? You tell me. Once boundaries are removed, there's no boundaries. The best part is that, of course, the museum defended it. A safe place where everyone feels welcome. Quote, in a statement shared with news.com.au, a spokesman for the Australian Museum said, I'll start that again. In a statement shared with news.com.au, a spokesman said the Australian Museum is committed to being a safe place where everyone feels welcome. Multiple members of our security and programming teams spoke with her, that's the person who took the photos and raised the complaint, spoke with her on the evening following the concerns she raised regarding two people wearing fancy dress. All right, fancy dress. So dressing up in drag is fancy dress. Is that the politically correct way of saying it, is it? I mean, my goodness. Fancy dress. Just pardon me while my head explodes. I mean, is there no safe place for letting children be children anymore? Thank goodness here in Australia we haven't had to do what Florida has done, which is introduce a parental rights and something bill, forgotten the name of it. I'm not going to quote the slang name that certain people call it, the don't save something or other bill. I'm not going to use that term because that is doing a disservice to the Florida legislature, who have done a good thing in preventing sexual instruction, preventing teachers from delivering sexual instruction to 5-year-olds. I mean, my goodness, who actually has a legitimate complaint about that? But you know who I blame? No, not you. I blame the inaction of the church. I really do. I blame the inaction of the church, because there was a point here, probably from the 1970s, where it started to arise. Real rise of postmodernism here in Australia, particularly at the tertiary level, the real, suggestions that Christianity had lost its intellectual standing and intellectuality, shall we say. Intellectual credibility is probably a better way of looking at it. Becoming far more prevalent in the 2000s. Again, not picking on Hillsongs and Bethels, but is often associated with the mega-church movement, if I can call it that. Again, I'm on the fence about Hillsong and Bethel. I don't have a vested interest either way. I don't attend either of those denominations. I think they write some good music. I think some of the music they write is ordinary. I've heard some good preaching coming from both. I've heard some preaching that I've coming from both. So I'm on the fence. I don't... But anyway, it's often associated with that sort of movement that really arose in the 2000s, where scriptural truth was just shifted. Well, not just shifted, it was sort of put to the side, not next to my book, I'll put it the other side, away from my book. Scriptural truth was moved to the side and replaced with what are appearing to be culturally relevant. Well, you reap what you sow. And it's very hard to clamber back ground once it has been given or conceded. So I don't know whether it was intentional or lazy. Intentional as in, well, we need to appear culturally relevant, and then why we needed to appear culturally relevant. Christianity has always been counterculture. Go back and look at the Book of Acts. It's always been counterculture. Or just laziness. Didn't see it coming. Or didn't think it was going to get as far as it has. So what do we do from here? What do we actually do from here? Because, this is... it may not worry you, but it worries me greatly. The more often these sorts of behaviours and lifestyles are considered acceptable by society, I am reminded of Sodom and Gomorrah. I really am. God abandoned that place. And then he destroyed it. But he abandoned it. and just left it to its own devices, left the people there to their own devices. You know, and the conversation that was had, you know, but what if there be 100 good men? What if there be 50 good men? What if there be 10 good men? What if there be one good man? Will you not destroy? Well, what do we need to do? We need to do what Christians have done since the crucifixion and resurrection. We need to build a counterculture. Maybe the time has come for you to find a good uncorrupted Christian school and send your children there. Maybe the time has come for you to homeschool. If neither of them are possible, then withdraw your children from any of these sorts of activities or celebrations that are occurring in the state school system. I mean, if we don't protect our children, if we don't raise them right, if we don't raise them in the fear of God, as in fear as in reverence, not fear as in afraid, but the reverent fear of God, if we don't raise them with biblical principles, if we don't raise them with the understanding that they're a male and female, man and woman, regarding abortions and all of that, that relationships are sacred, not transactional, and particularly sexuality is relational, not transactional, and it is within the confines of a lifelong commitment to someone else. If we don't start raising our children with these sorts of values, what legacy are we leaving them? In which case, are we prepared then to reap what we are sowing? So have a think about that. And as always, until next week, God bless.